Hello and welcome to Moment of Truth on Labour Social. I'm Graham Hughes. So it's officially happened. We have entered a technical recession with the economy shrinking the last 2 quarters, making a mockery of the Tories' unending bullshit about growing the economy. But here's the thing, our economy hasn't grown. Not just for 2 quarters, not just for 2 years, not just for 10 years, but for 17 years we have seen no significant growth in GDP. However, over that 17-year period, our population has increased by more than 10%, which means the GDP per capita is less now than it was in 2007. In the first 10 years of the last Labour government from 1997 to 2007, our economy doubled in size from around $1.5 trillion to around $3 trillion. It is now 2024 and our economy is still around $3 trillion. Now, I'm sure the right-wing commentators will blame all this on asylum seekers, transgender people, the woke mind virus, the civil service blob, female superheroes, good times, Moonlight, and the goddamn boogie. But the reality is this. The reason why our economy hasn't grown in 17 years is because for 14 of those years, the Tories have been in power. First, they gave us austerity, the stupidest thing you can do when an economy desperately needs stimulation is to make millions of people poorer, especially when those people spend almost all of their income in their local area. And then came the Brexit vote. 5 long years of uncertainty, and then bam, trade barriers go up all around us, like we were being punished for being on the losing side of a major war, while at the same time we had a prime minister who just wanted to party his way out of one of the most deadly pandemics the world has ever seen. We were still reeling from the effects of the COVID catastrophe when Vladimir Putin decided to launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a decision that might not have been taken if his ego hadn't been boosted by the Russian Empire's massive win of helping separate the UK from the rest of Europe. And just as we were adjusting to the new normal of having a massive mechanized war going off on our doorstep, along comes Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, who, spurred on by the disaster capitalists of Tufton Street, managed to screw up the economy so much in 7 short weeks of pandemonium that they wiped £425 billion from our pension funds, pushed inflation up to 11% and blew a hole in the Treasury at least £30 billion thick. Of course, Tory MPs will blame everything but their own sheer incompetence for the sorry state of our economy. Yes, we had the credit crunch. Yes, we had COVID. Yes, we were hit by rising energy prices as a result of Putin's decision to invade Ukraine. And yes, climate change is most definitely affecting us too. But those things have also affected every other country in the world. Nevertheless, the GDP per capita of Ireland has more than doubled over the last 17 years. The GDP of America, by far the richest country in the world, has grown by almost 90% over the same period. Germany, which Brexiters love to point at and say, but they're in recession too, saw their economy grow from around $3.4 trillion in 2007 to around $4.5 trillion in 2023, a 33% increase. Back in 2010, the UK was on track to overtake the German economy, and yet now, because of an even bigger recession in Japan, as of today, Germany has become the 3rd biggest economy in the world after the US and China, 2 countries with many times the population. Meanwhile, the UK's economy has been overtaken by that of India's, and the latest figures suggest that by the end of the year, we might well have dropped down to being the 7th biggest economy in the world behind France. And while I am acutely aware that money isn't everything, there is no getting away from the fact that people are struggling right now. Every family trying to live off an average wage has been made poorer. more desperate, and had their horizons curtailed by these posh, pompous, privately educated pricks in government, arrogant arseholes who think they know better than all of the economists, all of the scientists, and all of the experts in the world. A small army of privileged little creeps who dominate every aspect of public life in a country where people are living in agony, waiting 2 years for a hip operation, more than 60 days to get a cancer diagnosis, where people can't see their GP for love nor money, and where people are having to drill their own teeth. The UK in 2024, a place where people are choosing not to have children because they can barely afford to feed themselves, where schools are crumbling, the NHS is on its knees, and our rivers are overflowing with shit. There's no money for local councils to stop them going bankrupt. There's no money for HS2. 3 million people are forced to use food banks to stay alive. And then the news today, British gas profits have gone up tenfold, while millions have to choose between heating or eating. I'll tell you who's not struggling: the millionaires and the billionaires who told you to vote for Brexit. The ones who promised sunlit uplands and all the gold we could eat. There's 171 billionaires in the UK, and almost every single one of them is a Tory supporter. None of this affects them. They don't have to see the despair or hear the cries of the hoi polloi, or slot, the people they sneeringly call the great unwashed. I often think of this quote from The Great Gatsby. They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together, and let other people clean up the mess they had made. I don't want to spend the rest of my life cleaning up the mess that 14 years of Tory incompetence has left us with. But let me be clear, we have a lot of work to do, and that starts with getting people out to vote in the upcoming general election and ensuring that when the votes have been counted, the Conservative Party isn't just beaten, they are utterly annihilated, never to rise again. That's my take. Let me know yours in the comments below.